So this is professional practice, and we're talking about the Ontario College of Teachers Professional Advisory on the duty to report. I'm Kyle Gosho, your host, and I am here with our special guest, Adrian Globe, today. So, Adrian, it's nice to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great. So, I'm going to ask you our first question. Let's just get right on into it. To begin, can you explain what the duty to report is and why it's such a fundamental responsibility for educators?
Oh, sure, Kyle. That's a great question. The duty to report refers to the legal obligation that educators have to report suspected case of child abuse. This could also be neglect, and you're required to report this behavior to authorities. In Ontario, for example, the duty is outlined in the Child and Family Services Act. This act mandates that any professional who works with children must, I repeat, must report any concerns they have about the child's safety and well-being. This duty is fundamental because it helps protect vulnerable children and ensures that any potential harm is investigated. As educators, you and I have a responsibility to protect children in our care, and failure to report could have severe consequences for both the child and ourselves.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, failing to report could not only jeopardize a child's safety, but also put the educator at risk legally and ethically with the Ontario College of Teachers.
Exactly, that's well stated. Failure to report is a violation of the law, and a teacher who does not report could face legal consequences, including being investigated by the Ontario College of Teachers, possible criminal charges, or even losing their teaching license.
Well, that's a big and significant risk that teachers would put themselves in if they were not to report. So, what types of concerns or situations specifically trigger a teacher's duty to report, Adrian?
That's a great question. And now that we're getting deeper into it, we can actually discuss what triggers a teacher's need to report. And one of the main aspects of focus is the reasonable grounds to suspect that a child is being harmed or at risk of harm. This could include physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, or sexual abuse. And a teacher doesn't need to have concrete proof, just reasonable suspicion based on their observations or disclosures from a child. An example of this might be that a child shows you signs of a physical injury, or makes statements about abuse, or even seems withdrawn or fearful. All these are considered to be valid triggers for reporting. Even if a teacher is unsure, it's better to report and let the authorities investigate.
So, what you're saying is that regardless of how uncertain the situation may seem, it is important for us as educators and anyone really who works with children to take this disclosure from children or noticing any sign of abuse or neglect. We need to take it seriously.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, you just have to have the suspicion that um, something in it, something uncomfortable maybe is going on.
So, is it our responsibility as educators to find and have the proof, or do we just need to report it based on a suspicion?
That's a great question. I think that the reasonable suspicion is the key emphasis based on our observations or direct disclosure from the child.
Now, let's connect this to the ethical standards for teachers. How do the ethical standards for the teaching profession relate to the duty to report, and how does this align with values such as integrity, responsibility, and respect?
Well, that's a great question. The ethical standards for teaching profession include values like integrity, responsibility, and respect. These are crucial when addressing the duty to report. Integrity requires teachers to act honestly and ethically, even when it's difficult. Reporting suspected abuse demonstrates integrity because it shows we're putting the well-being of a child above anything else. Responsibility is about being accountable for our actions and ensuring that children's safety is not compromised. Respect is essential because it involves valuing and protecting the dignity of every child, and reporting suspected abuse shows that we care about their well-being. In a sense, the duty to report reflects these values by ensuring that we act in the best interest of the children in our care.
So these ethical standards guide educators to take action when necessary, especially when it involves protecting children.
Absolutely. And again, the protecting of children is such an important responsibility. Um, we cannot take it more seriously.
Thanks for that, Adrian. So, how does the Ontario College of Teachers professional advisory on the duty to report help guide educators in understanding and fulfilling their legal responsibilities?
That's now we're getting into the nitty gritty, and this is really important for teachers to understand. The Ontario College of Teachers Professional Advisory provides clear guidance for educators on their legal obligation to report concerns about child safety. It emphasizes that educators must report suspicions of abuse to children's aid societies and outline the steps involved in making a report. The advisory also highlights the importance of recognizing that we are not investigators, and it's not our role to determine whether abuse is happening. Our role is to report what we observe or suspect. The professional advisory also reassures educators that we are protected from legal action if we make a report in good faith and it turns out the suspicion was unfounded. This is important because, as we discussed previously, all we need is a reasonable suspicion. And I know a lot of teachers might be afraid of reporting something if it turns out it's unfounded. So this protects teachers in that regard.
That's really reassuring for teachers. So, making a report in good faith offers legal protection. It's all about prioritizing the safety of the child.
Absolutely.
So, moving on, confidentiality is a big part of professional practice. So, what role does confidentiality play in the duty to report? And how should teachers balance this with their obligation to report concerns?
Yeah, and confidentiality, as you may suspect, is essential in maintaining trust with students. It does not override the duty to report. Teachers have a duty to maintain confidentiality within the school community, but if a child's safety is at risk, that duty is secondary to the obligation to protect the child. If a teacher has concerns about abuse, they should share that information with the appropriate authorities, even if it involves breaking confidentiality. However, it is important to only share the information necessary for the report to follow the proper reporting channels. This ensures that we're respecting the privacy of the child while still fulfilling our legal and ethical obligations.
So, basically, teachers must always prioritize the child's safety over maintaining confidentiality, but they must still handle the situation carefully.
Yeah, that's really well said.
Awesome. So, what are the consequences that a teacher can face should they choose not to report a concern, either because they're unsure or out of fear of making a mistake?
That's a great question. Not reporting a concern, whether deliberate or out of fear, can have serious implications. The first implication would be for the teacher who fails to report. They could be seen as neglecting their professional and legal responsibilities. This could lead to an investigation by the Ontario College of Teachers, loss of their teaching license, and even criminal charges if the failure to report leads to harm. On a personal level, a teacher may experience feelings of guilt and regret knowing they did not act to protect a child when they had the opportunity. It's always better to err on the side of caution and report, even if there's doubt.
So it's clear that taking no action can have both legal and personal consequences for educators. So it's vital to make the report.
Yeah, and it definitely, you want to err on the side of caution, and have and kind of side with your gut feeling. I mean, as an educator, we see many types of situations every day, but I think you would know when something doesn't feel right, and it's important to really listen to that intuition within yourself.
Well, thank you for that, Adrian. So how does provincial and federal legislation, such as the Ontario Child Protection Act and the Human Rights Code, affect the teacher's duty to report?
Both of these pieces of legislation provide the legal framework for the duty to report. The Ontario Child Protection Act specifically mandates that teachers, like all professionals who work with children, must report suspected cases of child abuse or neglect. The Human Rights Code, while broader, plays a role in ensuring that every child, regardless of background, has the right to live free from harm and discrimination. Teachers are obligated to protect children from abuse, and these laws reinforce that obligation. The Ministry of Education also provides guidelines and policies such as PP9, which outlines the steps teachers must take when they suspect abuse.
So these laws and policies are there to ensure that teachers understand the importance of their role in protecting children's rights.
Yes, children's rights are paramount above anything else.
Great. So finally, how does the duty to report affect you personally and professionally? And what steps can you take to continue learning and improve your practice in this area?
Well, personally and professionally, the duty to report is a responsibility that it carries enormous weight. It relies on us as teachers to always be vigilant and aware of the signs of abuse or neglect, knowing that we have the power to help protect a child's safety. Professionally, it means that I must, and you must always act with integrity and make decisions that are in the best interest of the students. To continue improving in this area, I, for example, plan to stay informed about changes to legislation and attend professional development opportunities that focus on child protection. It's important to understand not only the law, but also the emotional and ethical aspects of reporting to ensure that we are always making the best decisions.
So it's clear that the duty to report requires continuous learning and a commitment to do what's best for students. Thank you for sharing such insightful thoughts today, Adrian.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. This was a great discussion.
So thank you for tuning into today's podcast, listeners. We hope this discussion on the duty to report has been informative and helpful in understanding the crucial role teachers play in protecting children. Stay safe, stay informed, and remember, your actions make a difference. Until next time.